2 years now, about 2 years ago. Met through our wives, and I'm always just, every time I talk with Mark or we go to lunch or whatever, he knows somebody else that's a genius in this business area. So he's a very well connected guy, really, really good with networking, and has a pretty diverse background too with businesses that he's worked in or worked with, consulting, and yeah, just a genius when it comes to networking and surrounding himself with the right people. So we don't really do a formal introduction in this, so Mark, do you want to just start out just telling everybody a little bit about some of your background, maybe a little bit about how you grew up, how you first got into the business world?
Yeah, for sure. So Mark Lee Ward with Clarity Consulting Group. I was a professional dancer and I went into auditing. That's totally a joke, guys. I put a little bit of time into Thunder from Down Under. So with that, so Clarity Consulting Group is an auditing firm. We audit our clients' suppliers, make sure they're not overcharging them. So with that being said, we're going to start off with a quiz. Is that okay?
Yeah.
And I have some awesome prizes, sort of. Jeremy's like, what are those? So they're little phone holders for like when you travel. Put them on there so you can watch stuff on the plane or whatever. First question. How many months are there in a year?
12.
Are you sure? Positive. Is there any other number that anyone would say? Okay, so I've audited before and there was 13 months in a year. How can there be 13 months in a year?
All in the moon cycle.
They're on a different calendar.
Yeah. Okay, so 13 months in a year. So we audited a company for PG&E, which is a huge utility in the West Coast in California. The supplier was a equipment rental, and they have rates that are daily, weekly, and monthly. Well, their month is 4 weeks. So how many weeks what's 4 times 12? 48. So they actually had a 13th month in there. So the contract that we had, my client was overspending by 1/12 every single year until we found it in an audit. They had no clue they were overspending by a 12th. And when they go out to bid every 3 or 4 years, no one else was doing it that way. So their rates looked awesome because they're like, oh sweet, these rates are lower than everyone else's. And we did the audit, they're like, what the crud? We've been overbilled to the tune of about $1.5 million a year for over 10 years. So when I ask something simple like how many months are in a year, it depends on what the contract says. Let me ask you this question. So this is pulled straight from a contract that I audited. Sorry. All engineering personnel will be billed at a blended rate of $135 per hour. Is there anything wrong with that?
It doesn't say what per hour. It would be 135 bunks of $1,000. It doesn't say dollars.
Okay, good point.
Each or all?
A blended rate, so $135 per hour.
What the heck's a blended rate?
So a lot of companies do that where they say your entry-level engineer and your senior project managers, rather than saying that's 85, that's 95, that's 100, we're just going to do a blended rate of $135.
Okay.
But could that include, like, that might be all of your engineers, you'd have 20 of them working, you're paying 135 an hour total, right?
That could be a part of it. So here was the issue we found on this one. Have you guys ever outsourced anything to India? How much is an engineer with a master's degree from India?
Anywhere from $10 to $35 an hour.
Yeah, that's super high. We've seen master's degrees with an engineering degree at $8 an hour. So they use the word, all engineering personnel will be billed at a blended rate. They were using US staff and India staff. The majority was India staff. So at $135 an hour and they're paying them $8 an hour, that's some awesome markup. If you can get it, do it. But so we quickly, and that cost my client $900,000 a year for that, to make that mistake. That one word personnel instead of saying US staff. Changing that and changed it, saved it $900,000 a year. Okay, this is a fun fact. Who gets scammed more often, 20-year-olds or 70-year-olds?
70s.
Fraud stuff.
Oh.
Everyone say
70s
70s.
have way more money, right?
It's actually 20-year-olds. 20-year-olds get scammed more often. So part of our auditing, we also do fraud stuff. So 20-year-olds get scammed way more often. The dollar amounts just are a lot less. Because 20-year-olds don't have much money. Except for Jeremy when he was 20, he was a baller. That being said, when you go to the Culvers and they say, would you like your receipt? Do you say yes or no?
No.
Always say yes. Why?
They're gonna print it anyway.
To make sure you
Verify
charge
it's
what you
accurate.
thought you got charged.
If that's a bad actor that's at that cash register who gets paid horrible, I should say, I'm not singling out Culvers at all. But if that's a bad actor who gets paid horribly at that, for whatever an hour, and you say, no, I don't want a receipt, they mentally can say, hey, I'm gonna take that one, I'm gonna copy that one, and I'm gonna double it, and just pull out cash. Or they'll sell it or whatever like that. If you say, I want that my receipt, they will mentally say, okay, I'm not gonna scam that one. And you can literally take it and then throw it away 2 seconds later. So that's your fun fact. If you learned nothing today, when they say, would you like a receipt, always say yes. Okay. What's the most anyone has ever, this is just randomness, but what's the most anyone's ever spent on pizza or a delivery pizza?
For one?
For 1 box of pizza.
It was like 5 pizzas, I think.
Depends on if it's in that Bitcoin.
You got it. $1 billion for 5 pizzas. You guys heard that story?
Yeah.
Guy was at Harvard, they were offering Bitcoin to do a survey. They offered him 10,000 Bitcoin. This is back when it was in pennies. And he traded it away for like, I think 5 or 6 pizzas. That's worth $1 billion now. So, learn from it. I don't know what you learned from it. Last thing I'm gonna talk about, as I talk about the nerdery of auditing. What is the, how do I say this? What's the fastest growing human trafficking industry right now or practice? You're probably gonna say sex trafficking, it's not actually.
Labor?
What kind of labor?
Cyber, IT.
Kind of. So there are call centers right now. It's confirmed as of last year, the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners said there's at least 600,000 people right now every day trying to scam you guys. They in the past they go to Thailand and they go out to the bush or the farmlands and say, hey, we've got these high-paying jobs in the U.S. Take the kids and go sell them for sex trafficking. Now they're saying we have these really good tech jobs, so they're recruiting older people, even like adults, bringing them in, setting up call centers to scam first world countries. That's emails, that's phone calls, that's phishing, whatever it is. Over 600, like this is Cambodia, Laos, Thailand, Philippines, over 600,000 people confirmed. And the government's doing nothing about it because it makes good money for them. So they literally lock them in and say, hey, if you want to eat, you better scam someone today. And if their net income is like $2 a day, they can scam you for $100. That's huge, huge money for them. So be careful of scams. There's a lot of ways to protect yourself, but anyhow, that's one of the things we also look at is in our company.
So how did you first get into auditing this? Because obviously now you have tons of experience, you know all the little things to look for. What was kind of your background? What were you studying for? Kind of how did you find the audit and consulting?
Yeah. So I had a bunch of friends growing up that like, hey, I want to be a doctor when I grow up. I want to be a chiropractor when I grow up. I want to be a lawyer. I never had that. I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up. I envy those guys, but really, so I started political science in undergrad, so then I got my political science bachelor's, got an MBA. I really wanted to do personal financial planning. I did that for a little bit, and then got into the consulting side of life. Worked for Flying J as a consultant, did some awesome things there. You guys heard of Flying J? Everyone's heard of them. Worked for AIG, one of the biggest companies in the world, as a consultant for them. And then I left like the corporate world and went into the full consulting arm. From there, I started our own company about 3.5 years ago, and it's been awesome. So I fell into auditing backwards. I was doing consulting, and what happened was a lot of people came and said, hey, we do these audits, we find these issues where it's like, hey, 13 calendar months. but no one ever fixes the problem, we just identify it. And so I started that consulting arm in an auditing firm where we helped fix the problems. And then from there, kind of built our own and went from there, so.
Okay. Cool. And so when you're meeting with potential clients, are you looking more that you gave some examples of how much money you can save clients, so is that basically your sales process is helping them see like, yes, it's a win-win, you pay our consulting company, but it's saving you way more money that you're paying us?
Oh, yeah.
What does the sales process look like?
Yeah, it's interesting because in a lot of the worlds, you have to be audited. Like, there's a lot of companies that you have to be audited for if they're public companies. What the type of auditing we do, we literally look at suppliers' bills to make sure they're not overcharging. That's not a requirement by any stretch of the imagination. So there's some companies, I've been talking to one company out of Denver that spends $6 billion a year. They've never audited any of their suppliers. They're just trusting on faith that no one's taking advantage of them. I know who their suppliers, I hope this doesn't go out to too many people. I know who their suppliers are, I know they're being taken advantage of, but they just don't, that's not a part of the process. So the trick is in the sales process is, here's the benefit to you guys. One client we have right now, we billed them a couple million, and we've recovered $10 million last year, 2024. So that's a great ROI for something they don't have to do anything for. We just go out and just find the money and bring it back to them.
Okay, what about, so I know with Clarity, you've intentionally kept it small. So I think a question that most business owners have is, when is the right time to hire employees? And how do you kind of manage the growth, of finding that balance between growth and keeping it, everything under control and the right team environment, business environment that you want?
One hard thing about the Clarity and what we do is, we're a US-based company. We're throughout the US, so we've got employees, myself here in Utah. We don't have a single client in Utah. So we've got employees, we had them in New Mexico, in California, in Texas, in Wisconsin, in Tennessee. So we're scattered all the way across, so it's hard to build that culture. Have you guys ever read the book, The Company of One? If you're interested in entrepreneurship, that's something you should read, add that to your list. It's a very interesting thought process where he says, you know, everyone in the US wants to grow and get bigger. And the premise of that book is why? If you're happy as a company of one, do it. He talked about CPAs that only work till August, they shut down for the next 4 months. It's like they get enough money till where they're happy and they shut down for 4 months. And it's all about balancing quality of life with what you want to accomplish. Growth isn't always better. I've heard it said over and over, every employee you hire is another headache. And hopefully you're not hiring that many headaches, but it just adds more complexity to your life. I actually talked to a guy this morning who's got a company, and he's like, I want to get rid of all my employees and take my company smaller to get to that sweet spot of where I can just do it, call my own shots, and be done by the end of the day. Instead of like getting a call at 7 o'clock at night saying, hey, I screwed this up, can you come help me out? I don't want that anymore. I just want to be just myself. So right now we're still a small mom and pop, but we've got some massive clients. The third largest utility in the nation, the second largest utility in the nation, the biggest oil and gas company in the nation. So we've got some big clients because of our experience, but we're still fairly small.
So with that being said, with your current business, Clarity, what would you say, what is your biggest headache, or what are your favorite parts of owning your business and your least favorite parts?
That's a good question. So best part is I just took 2 weeks off, and other than like a couple 30-minute checks of emails here and there, I didn't work at all. When I worked for someone else, I've never done that. And there are times when you have your own company, you don't do that either. I've been through that phase where it's like you're working every day because you're the CEO, the CFO, the COO, the janitor, you're doing everything. That, luckily for me, is behind me now in this company and some others that I'm doing. But for the most part, I took 2 weeks off and it was awesome. Never done that in my entire life, other than when I was in college. And you go through that wake-up call, like, you you leave college, you're like, wait, I don't get 3 weeks off for Christmas? Come on. This is the worst working, so.
Yeah. Okay. What about
Obviously-
your least favorite parts?
Well, some of the benefit, so that's obviously a benefit, but some of the least part is that point of, hey, if I don't go find a new client, if I lose a client and I don't find another one, I don't eat. And I think that's pretty self-explanatory, but.
Okay, so it is kind of like the pressure of it almost.
Because I do know quite a few friends that they're in that early phase, or they've grown and it's so fast where it's like, okay, I've got 40 employees, we have to grow or else we'll die to feed that machine.
So most businesses feel a need to, or a pressure to constantly be changing, adapting, innovating. Sure, when it comes to auditing, there's always different things, especially things like fraud. There's always different types of scams out there, so you always have to be kind of up to date with what businesses are facing each year. Do you feel that need to constantly change and adapt, and what's kind of that process that you go through to figure out what the right direction is for your company?
Yeah. Let me answer that two different ways. First is myself personally, and one is Clarity. When I was younger, I always thought, like, you want to build this company that's like Walmart. You know, like, okay, I want to be an entrepreneur, I want to create Walmart. But I'm trying to say this not in a boastful way, but how many of you guys have heard of Jeff Bezos? Everyone? How many of you have heard of Warren Buffett? Elon Musk? Until tonight, have you heard of Mark Lee Ward? No one ever has. What do all of us have in common? That group? Top 1% in the world of earners. You don't, like, no one's ever heard of me, no one's ever heard of Clarity, a small group has. But you can do a great job and make a ton of money without being Jeff Bezos, without creating this huge company. Like, you can make money in so many millions of ways. And I didn't know that when I was younger. I always thought you had to be, everyone's gonna know your name. You don't have to. You find one niche and you do it really well, you get paid well for it, you have an awesome life. So personally, when I hear that, like, you don't have to do it. For Clarity and innovation, we get hit up with ChatGPT questions about that all the time. Our bread and butter is smart people knowing exactly what to look at, knowing how to do a process well. Jeremy asked me earlier, how do I win accounts? We're only 11 people. There's no way I should have ExxonMobil as one of my clients. A part of it was because 5 years ago, I spoke at a conference, 6 years ago, and some guy in the audience said, I want to talk to that guy. And when he got to the right level at his company, he's like, hey, come talk to us about what you guys do. Talk to him, he's like, let's do it right now. So, yes, innovation, but for us, we're hampered a little bit by what our clients will allow when it comes to innovation. We just hire smart people who know what they're doing.
So I want to shift a little bit from Clarity, this consulting group. And do you mind just talking about some of the experience you've had? I know you dabble in real estate license, and that you've at least looked into starting different product type businesses, various businesses. So do you want to just talk about some of your other business experiences, ventures that you've been on?
Yeah. What's the hardest part of a company? What do you guys think?
I think deciding what to focus on. Sometimes it's hard to pick what you really want to do.
Yeah, I was helping a $200 million a year in revenue company. They filed bankruptcy because they couldn't figure out what to focus on.
That's crazy.
I would say the hardest always is sales. Without sales, everything else, you can have the best product in the world, without sales, it's dead. What was your question again?
Just about other
Other
business ventures,
things.
yeah.
So with that being said, sales is critical, getting it out there and finding an opportunity to make money. And so the way I've approached it, and I've got a buddy out in California who he's got, I think, 8 or 9 different companies. And all it is he's got a big network and someone says, hey, you're smart, can you do this? Sure, starts up another company. And then he just finds the right people and connects them. So someone will come to me and say, hey, can you guys do the services? No, I can't, but I'll find someone that can. And then I'll take a piece of it and cut it that way. That's kind of how I approached life. And so I've got 6 or 7 different streams of income. And some of them pay great. Some of them are like, last year I made 40 grand on this, but I spent 2 hours on it. So there's things like, just always keep your mind open to, it's the exact opposite of focus. Like, be willing to do anything if it presents itself. So if someone calls me and says, hey, can you do this? I'll look at it. Someone told me once, and it's a little cheesy, but pull every thread that comes your way, and some of them will turn into quilts and some of them will unravel in front of you. But you still want to be involved, pull every single thread. And I've done a million things that have never panned out to anything, but then a lot of them have been successful, so.
So, and how do you find that balance between, I know you've shared examples with me before of people ask you for those things, and sometimes you're almost too nice in just giving it away or helping them out because they're friends, they're in need. So how do you find that balance of how much to give away and donate versus how much do you turn it into a business and start something from it?
Yeah, I don't know if there's I don't know. I was telling Jeremy before, the last fireside chat I did, it was in front of 500 people. So this is a little bit smaller, and I got paid really well to do it. So I don't know what the right answer is, but I'll send you an invoice later.
So what would you say with so you've started these different businesses, like you said, you've seen some of them, they just unravel, don't turn anything, some of them blow up and it ends up being bigger than you think. What do you think are some of the keys to success?
Yeah. So I started, hey Tara. So I started putting together some thoughts around what are some things that if I were young and just starting out, what would I find as valuable? And first I'm gonna quote, so I went to a session just like this. I got my MBA and my undergrad from Utah State. I went to a session just like this in 2001. And I can't remember the guy's name, something Wright, but he said something that changed my life forever. He said the definition of character is following through with the commitment after the excitement of that commitment is over. And I think there's a lot of people that are excited about different ideas, excited about different businesses, and then a week later it's dead. And then a year later they're gonna seize that business being very successful. That was my idea, dang it. But you have to have that character to say, I'm gonna follow through after the excitement's over. The second key thing is I'd say always be a learner. I consume a lot of books. I work a lot of hours, but when I'm not working, I love Audible. I'm just downloading books. And there's a list of probably 20 books that have changed my life forever. You guys have read Jocko's book on extreme ownership? What do you guys think? Give me a summary of it. What for the rest of the group?
There's very few things you can't control, and unless you're doing every possible thing that you can control right, don't complain.
That's a good one. So I'll give you an example from a past company before I started this one. So part of my job is after we do an audit, let's say we audit the supplier, we find $4 million. And then the client, the suppliers never say, oh, you're right, thank you, auditor, here's a check for $4 million. It's happened once, never. So my job is to go and do that settlement process where you bring in the client and the supplier, say, okay, let's work this out and create a win-win. So I went into it, I was working for another firm, the partner at the firm had done the audit, and I was coming in to do the settlement. It's a $5 million, it's 2 huge companies that if I said their names, you would know them. The partner, and I just assumed he knew what he was doing because he was a partner in the firm, been doing this for years. He was not prepared at all. And he embarrassed both of us. That money went from this down to like a couple $100,000. And I walked away from that, and I just finished Extreme Ownership by Jocko, what's his last name? Willing. I just finished his book, and my first thought was, I'm gonna chew this guy out. Like he didn't do this, this, and this. And I'd read that book, I was like, nope, this is 100% my fault. So in the book, he talks about it's 100% your fault no matter what, always. And so I just read about that, so I thought, okay, this is my fault, how do I fix it? And what I took away from that was, whenever I do a settlement with this guy, I'm gonna have 3 meetings up front beforehand and make sure he's ready. So I could have easily just walked away from that going, it's his fault, he's an idiot, he just cost us $1 million in revenue, and then that's it. But instead, by taking extreme ownership and saying it's my fault, I learned from it and I was able to do a better job the next time. So, be a learner, and that was literally because of that book, finishing it a week before. Had I not read that book, I would have just done my normal style of, this guy's an idiot, I don't wanna work with him. So.
And then did you go on to continue working with him after?
I did, and we did some good settlements. It was very painful, and I ended up leaving the company and starting my own, so.
Okay. Well, I think you already touched on it a little bit, but, so I have one final question for you with some key takeaways to give, and then we'll open it up to the audience for some Q&A. But most of the people here own their own businesses or plan to start another business. So what would be some key advice or takeaways that can be applied across multiple industries? I know that's one of them. But do you have anything else that you want to leave with the group?
Yeah, so I started my first business. Well, I'm gonna say company because we had a meeting and all this stuff. I was 11, and we went around to the neighborhood and we did landscaping. Me and my buddy, we handed out flyers. We can't drive. Like, we didn't think through the process. But I started my first company at 11, and then I went, and then I had a couple others when I was still young, teenager years. And then I worked for corporate America for 15 years maybe. There's nothing wrong with having a base income and doing a side hustle as a company. It might alleviate stress. Being an entrepreneur with one source of income that's you and you alone is very, very stressful. So if there's a way, you guys ever read Hangry by the Grubhub founder? You should add that to your list. This guy, pretty funny, he started it just because he wanted to find good pizza in Chicago and ended up selling it for multiple billions of dollars. He wasn't an entrepreneur. He literally just wanted to find good pizza, and then he just kind of compiled a list and then made it bigger and bigger, and next thing you know, he's got a multi-billion-dollar company. His wife was a doctor. That helps starting your own business. So, key takeaway, marry the right rich person. But what I'm saying is, there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, I like being an entrepreneur, but I wanted some steady income too. So go work for corporate America, and until you can scale up to the right size, or until you have a proof of concept completed, go find a job that pays you well. I've heard a lot of people say, don't do that. Go all in or else you're gonna fail no matter what. I don't know. I've seen a lot of people be successful in the way I'm proposing, but.
Do you ever feel like your time, like you mentioned, you have 6 or 7 different streams of income. Have you kind of streamlined those or automated those at all now? Or like, do you ever feel like it consumes too much of your time that you're trying to divide yourself in too many different directions?
So, good try not to cry, but I'll tell you a story about my dad. My dad, we grew up an Idaho farmer, and when he was 15, his dad took him over he bought a separate farm that was like 30 minutes away, which was an eternity back in the ages. And so my dad would live in a square 10 by 10 building with like plywood, and he worked that job the entire summer by himself. Every 3 or 4 days, his dad would come over with ham, cheese, it was bologna, cheese, and bread. That was it. He's like, so at 15, he was working 17-hour days. He's like, work never bothered me. And that's the kind of the way I was raised, that work is work. And so, yes, I've got multiple streams, but with the way I've structured it, working 100 hours a week is not crazy. I've done it many times, but also I'm getting older, I can't manage on 2 hours of sleep anymore like I used to every night. And so now it's like, I have more freedom now than I ever have, and I have more income as a result of just doing it the right way. And I've turned stuff down where I said, no, I would love to do that, but I'm gonna put you in touch with so-and-so and take a small cut of it. Did I sell auditing well enough? Anyone want to audit?
No, well, we really appreciate Mark, and like I said, I've known Mark for 2 years, been to lunch with him several times, and that's, still learned a lot of new things. He's a very humble guy, always giving. I didn't know he was a top 1% earner till today. It's not something he just wants around, so thanks for being
It's on my
transparent
tattoo.
with us, yeah. But yeah, we really appreciate that, all the insights that you've shared, and thank you so much for your time.
Yep.